Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Steady English Stories. Close your eyes for a moment, my friend. Picture this. It is a quiet morning in Los Angeles, in the year 1926. Inside a small, crowded hospital room, a young woman gives birth to a baby girl. There are no cameras. There is no crowd outside. There is only a tired mother and a small, crying baby with no idea that one day the entire world would know her face. That baby's name was Norma Jeane. But you, my friend, know her by a different name, a name that would later shine in bright lights above movie theaters all over the world. Marilyn Monroe. How does a lonely, unwanted little girl become one of the most famous faces in human history? And why, my friend, did that same famous face carry so much quiet sadness behind it? Before we travel through this story together, if tales like this one help you learn English, please subscribe to Steady English Stories. It costs nothing, and it helps our small community of learners keep growing. Now, my friend, let us go back to the beginning, to a childhood far darker than any bright Hollywood spotlight. Norma Jeane's mother, a woman named Gladys, worked long hours cutting film reels at a movie studio. Gladys struggled with serious mental illness. An illness, my friend, means a sickness, and mental illness means a sickness that affects a person's mind and emotions, not their body. Because of this, Gladys was often unable to care for her young daughter. Norma Jeane's father was never truly present in her life at all, so the little girl was sent to live with foster families. A foster family, my friend, is a family that takes care of a child who cannot live with their own parents. Norma Jeane moved from home to home again and again. Some families were kind to her, others were not. For a period of her childhood, she lived in an orphanage, a place for children who have no parents able to raise them. Can you imagine, my friend, being a small child, packing your few belongings again and again, never quite knowing which house would be home next? Norma Jeane later said, in simple words, that, as a child, she often felt like nobody truly wanted her, like she was simply passed from place to place because no one else knew what else to do with her. Have you ever felt that same quiet ache? My friend, the feeling of being unwanted, even when you have done nothing wrong at all. Despite this painful beginning, something inside young Norma Jeane refused to break completely. She found small pockets of comfort where she could. She loved watching movies, sitting in a dark theater, she said. She could forget her own difficult life for a little while and imagine, instead, being someone else entirely, someone glamorous, someone loved, someone whose life mattered to people watching. At just 16 years old, still far too young for the adult world waiting outside, Norma Jeane got married, mainly to avoid being sent back into foster care yet again. It was not a marriage built from deep romantic love. It was, in many ways, simply a doorway out of an unstable childhood into whatever uncertain future waited beyond it. While her young husband served overseas during the Second World War, Norma Jeane took a job at a factory, helping build parts for military airplanes. It was ordinary, exhausting work, done by thousands of other ordinary young women across the country at that difficult time. But one day, an army photographer arrived at that very factory, sent to take pictures showing women doing important work for the war effort. When his camera turned toward Norma Jeane, something unexpected happened. The photographs of her practically glowed off the page. There was something different about her in front of a camera, a natural warmth, a magnetic quality that instantly drew the viewer's eye. That photographer encouraged her to try modeling. Slowly, hesitantly, Norma Jeane agreed. What began as a small, uncertain photography job would soon pull this quiet, uncertain young woman toward a completely different life, one she could never have imagined back in that lonely foster home. Modeling agencies noticed her. Magazine covers followed. And somewhere in this exciting, unfamiliar new world, a studio executive suggested she change her name entirely, leave Norma Jeane behind, and step forward as someone brand new. My friend, this is the exact moment our story truly begins to turn. A struggling, uncertain young woman was about to disappear, and in her place, an entirely new name, a new face, a new legend, was about to be born. What do you think it costs a person, deep inside, to leave their entire old identity behind and become someone completely new? The studio gave her a new name, Marilyn Monroe. It was glamorous, memorable, easy for audiences everywhere to say and to remember. Norma Jeane dyed her hair a bright platinum blonde. She practiced a new voice, a new walk, a new way of smiling for the cameras. Slowly, carefully, a new public person was being built, piece by piece, on top of a private woman still carrying all her old wounds underneath. At first, success came slowly. Marilyn appeared in small film roles, tiny parts that barely gave audiences time to notice her. She was, for years, simply one more hopeful face among thousands of young women trying to break into Hollywood. She took acting classes. She studied constantly, determined to actually become skilled at her craft, not simply rely on her striking appearance alone. Isn't it interesting, my friend, how many people assume that fame arrives instantly, when really, for most people who achieve it, it arrives only after years of quiet, unnoticed effort? Then, in the early 1950s, everything changed rapidly. Marilyn appeared in several films that captured genuine public attention. Audiences loved her particular combination of playful humor, natural beauty, and a strange, touching vulnerability. My friend means an openness to being hurt, an emotional softness that audiences could somehow sense, even through the screen. She was funny, but she also seemed, somehow, quietly fragile beneath the humor. By 1953, Marilyn Monroe was no longer just another actress. She had become one of the biggest movie stars in the entire world. Her films earned enormous amounts of money. Her photographs appeared on magazine covers across dozens of countries. A now famous photograph of her white dress blowing upward over a New York subway grate became one of the most recognized images in the history of cinema. Can you picture it, my friend? A poor little girl once passed between foster homes, now recognized instantly by nearly everyone, everywhere on Earth. But here, my friend, is where our story reaches its complication, because rapid, enormous fame rarely arrives without a serious cost attached to it. Studios began treating Marilyn less like a talented actress with real, artistic ambitions, and more like a product, something to be marketed, packaged, and sold to audiences purely for entertainment value. She was frequently given roles that emphasized her beauty and comedic charm, while her deeper acting talents were often overlooked or dismissed entirely by studio executives and critics alike. Privately, this frustrated her deeply. Marilyn wanted desperately to be respected as a serious actress, not simply admired as a beautiful face on a poster. She eventually moved to New York and began studying with respected acting teachers, hoping to prove to herself and to everyone else that real depth existed beneath her glamorous public image. What do you think it feels like, my friend, to be loved by millions of people and yet still feel almost completely misunderstood by nearly all of them? Marilyn's personal life grew increasingly complicated as well. She married and divorced multiple times, including a highly publicized marriage to a famous baseball player and later a respected playwright. Neither marriage brought her the lasting peace or stability she seemed to be quietly searching for her entire life. Photographers followed her constantly. Reporters analyzed her every public appearance. The distance between the confident, glamorous Marilyn Monroe the world adored and the anxious, uncertain Norma Jeane, still living quietly underneath, seemed to grow wider with each passing year. She battled ongoing struggles with anxiety and insomnia. Insomnia, my friend, means having serious difficulty falling or staying asleep at night. She increasingly relied on prescription medications to help her sleep and to help manage the constant, overwhelming pressure of fame that never seemed to pause, not even for a single quiet moment. By the early 1960s, Marilyn Monroe stood at the very peak of global stardom. Her name was recognized everywhere. Her image appeared on countless magazines, films, and advertisements. And yet, my friend, behind that dazzling, world-famous smile, a deep and painful exhaustion had quietly begun to take hold. What do you think happens when a person reaches the very top of the entire world's attention, yet still feels desperately, hopelessly alone? On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her home in Los Angeles at only 36 years old. The official investigation concluded that she died from an overdose of prescription medication, the very same medication she had come to depend on, night after night, just to find a few hours of peaceful sleep. To this day, some questions about her final hours remain unclear, and many books have been written trying to explain exactly what happened. But my friend, rather than dwelling on the mystery, I think it is far more meaningful for us to sit quietly for a moment with the simple sadness of it. A woman who brought laughter and light to millions of strangers around the world died largely alone, carrying a private pain that most of those millions never fully saw. News of her death spread rapidly around the entire globe. Strangers wept openly in the streets. Newspapers in dozens of countries published her photograph on their front pages, often with the very same glowing smile that had first captured the world's attention over a decade earlier. In an instant, my friend, the woman the world knew as Marilyn Monroe became something more than simply a movie star. She became a symbol of beauty, yes, but also, quietly, a symbol of how much unseen suffering can exist directly behind a smiling, famous face. Have you ever looked at someone who seemed to have every possible reason to be happy, my friend, and still wondered what private sadness they might be carrying, invisible to everyone around them? More than 60 years later, Marilyn Monroe remains one of the most recognized faces in the entire world. Her films are still watched. Her photographs still appear on posters, magazines, and museum walls across dozens of countries. Yet, increasingly, historians and biographers look past the glamorous surface, choosing instead to focus on the real, complicated woman underneath, a woman who grew up unwanted, who fought hard to be taken seriously as an artist, and who battled quiet struggles that fame, money, and fans' adoration alone could never fully heal. She was not a perfect woman, my friend, and her story is not a simple, tidy fairy tale. But there is something deeply human and deeply worth remembering, hidden inside it. I think it is this. The image the world sees of a person is very often only a small, carefully polished piece of who that person truly is underneath. Marilyn Monroe spent her entire adult life being watched, admired, and photographed by millions of people. And yet, in many ways, she still felt profoundly unseen and misunderstood. This teaches us something gentle but important. Real kindness means looking a little deeper than the surface, both when we look at others and when we look at ourselves. This is exactly like your own English learning journey, my friend. Perhaps, right now, your spoken English still feels uncertain, still feels far from where you truly want it to be. But remember this: what people see or hear from you today is not the complete, final story of who you are becoming. Just as there was always more depth to Norma Jeane than the glossy photographs ever fully showed, there is always more progress happening quietly inside you than a single conversation could ever fully reveal. Be patient with yourself, my friend. The same gentle patience we now wish, looking back, that the world had shown her. If this story touched you today, please give this video a like and subscribe to Steady English Stories so you never miss our next journey together. And I would love to know which part of Marilyn Monroe's story surprised you the most. Tell me in the comments below. Until next time, my friends, keep learning.